Okay, once you have all your outline carvings done, the next step is to carve out all the sections that are shaded in dark. Now, you want to do the whites of your eyes, and if you have like the inside of your mouth or any other little spaces still with your little tool. But then when you're ready to do the wider spaces, you're going to want to switch to a wider tool. And remember, there's all sorts of different sized pieces. You can check for the number on the back. And just like if you were painting, if you're painting a small space, then you want a small tool. If you're carving a big space, you want a bigger tool. The thing to remember is that when you have a wider tool, the wider it is, the more it's going to want to dig down into your linoleum instead of just staying flat with the surface. So you do need to be careful and cautious that you're keeping it as level as you can. Remember, hold it so that your handle is level with your linoleum. I'm not holding it like a pencil like this. I've got it almost straight out from my fingers so that I can go straight across without gouging into the linoleum. Because if you go through, it won't hurt your print, but if you stay nicer to the surface, it's easier to print. Also, then you can put another picture on the back. So then you can have your face, or that you could draw something else. So when you do that, though, you just want to think about carving kind of stripes. And for the sake of time, I'm going to show you the rest just using my niece's picture here because it's already done. So here you can see the sections that have been carved out. It's done in just a nice little stripe pattern. They're still very close to the surface. We kept the blade very straight and finished everything out. So you can see the white part of her eye. The tub is going to be white. There's a wider space for the tiles so that I know that there's going to be a decent amount of white ready for the paper, so it's not too overwhelming. Okay, so after you have carved all of that out, the next step is printing. So you're going to need some printing paint, and I think regular paint actually works too, but we have some nice printing paint, so we're going to use that. And you're going to use what's called a brayer. Now we have two different types of brayers. We have some that have these little edge pieces, and we have some that don't. They both work just fine. The only difference is when you use one that has the edge, it's made so that it stays on the linoleum, like it doesn't slide off. It's not really a big issue, so it's not a huge deal that you have it. But when you get your paint, you want to be sure to not gouge the styrofoam. When you're doing that, you want to use it up, and I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing you want to do is I like to kind of squish up the paint just to be sure it's not going to be too oily. That's nicely mixed up. And you don't need a whole lot of paint. I kind of get about enough to take up the surface space of a quarter. Okay, it's not a whole lot, but it's enough that it's going to fill my picture. And then with the brayer, okay, using this one, these are pointing up. I'm going to roll a little bit in one direction, going back and forth. Then I'm going to turn it a 90-degree angle, roll it this way until I have a lot of paint nicely coated on my brayer. Then you're going to run that on your print. I want to be sure that I'm getting the ink all the way to the corners. Of my pictures. And sometimes that's why it works out nice. If you don't have the edge pieces, it's a little bit easier to get those. Okay, so I have a nice thick amount of paint. If you have too much paint, it's bad. It'll all go in all your cracks. If you don't have enough paint, it won't transfer really well. So sometimes it takes just a little bit of playing around with to figure out, what the right amount of paint is. Then I'm going to very carefully flip this over and line it up on the corner of my paper. Okay, then using this other brayer, one that does not have paint on it, I'm going to push the back of this just to be sure that I have it printed nice and dark. And there we go. So if I were going to analyze this, so you can see the parts around her nose and her mouth didn't show up quite as well, so maybe I could have a little less paint there. Or I can go back and carve those sections out a little bit deeper. They might not have been wide enough to really show up. And then try it again and see how that goes. And my guess is I probably need to go ahead and do that because they're pretty thin. Here you can see that there's definitely enough space that the paint didn't go down in it. So do that a couple times, test it out, get a feel for how much paint you need or don't need. Then when I do a second one, again, this is just practice, so it's okay just to put another piece, but I want to show you what it looks like if it's not enough paint. Okay, it might turn out like that, and that's not enough paint. You need to really see the color. So when I'm ready to switch paint, because for our project, since we're studying Andy Warhol, you will have 4 prints. Okay, remember to keep them lined up right next to the edge. Okay, you want the extra space to be on the edge of your picture, not in the center. You'll have 4 different prints, and there'll be 4 different colors. And between each one, you're going to just take your print to the sink, your plate to the sink, and wash it off. If there's toothbrushes there, which hopefully I remember, that will help you get kind of down in the cracks. If not, you can also bend your plate a little bit, and that'll help kind of rinse out the space in between. Use a sponge and things like that to help you get out all that color as much as you can. And then go ahead and switch to the next color. Stamp it, clean it out again, switch to the next color, stamp it, clean it out again. And then when you're done, you will have a lovely 4-colored picture. Okay, so here's an example of that one when it's done.